Okay, this is the live testimony of Captain Jacob Morris in Lorain Municipal Court at a probable cause hearing that he swore in front of the judge. Let's listen. 30 minutes.
Case number 2024, CRB 02378, State of Ohio versus Aaron Franklin Petty. The matters here for court determination pursuant to Criminal Rule 4 of probable cause to approve the charges and issue a warrant. Mrs. Savory, proceed.
Yes, sir.
Okay, officer, please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony about to give this court with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Okay. Lieutenant Morris, I just need you to walk through for the court the matters involving an investigation into Mr. Garen Petty. You're able to do that, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And can you just, as a preliminary matter, just tell the judge how it is you first yourself became involved in the matter?
So I received an email from Chief McCann that an incident had occurred at Lorain City Council chambers between Mr. Petty. It involved Brianna Dull, the clerk of council, and several council members and members of the city administration were present while the interaction took place. But that there was an interaction between Mr. Petty and Ms. Dull, during which several people reported Mr. Petty's actions and demeanor to be quite aggressive, and several people were in fear, to include Ms. Dull, was in fear for her own physical safety, which Chief McCann directed me at that time to conduct an investigation into the matter to see if it met any criminal statute, any violation of a criminal statute.
And just can you set the scene for the court in terms of the parties that you've mentioned? Who is Mr. Petty?
Okay, so Mr. Petty is a member of the public who is a regular or somewhat regular at council meetings at times. To my understanding, at times he can be somewhat critical of the decisions made, but he is a regular attendee of city council meetings.
And you mentioned Miss Brianna Dull. Who is she?
She's the clerk of Lorain City Council.
Okay. And that's not an elected position, correct?
No, ma'am.
But she is a public servant?
Correct. She was appointed.
And what are your understandings of her duties as clerk of council?
She has several duties, both during meetings and after meetings, and even when there's not a meeting going on. One of those duties is to transcribe council meetings and then post the transcriptions or send them to be posted. She also holds the key to city council chambers. She, in a sense, is a custodian of city council chambers. During meetings, she operates or activates the recording system that records our city council meetings. She also deactivates that at the end of the meetings. And she also locks up city council chambers. And she's got a couple other clerical duties during the meeting where she announces actions taken during the meetings.
Okay. And what was the date of the alleged incident that you were ordered to investigate?
July 1st, 2024, this year.
And just walk the court through what you came to know.
So I began my investigation by following up with Ms. Dull. It was the next day, so it was July 2nd. This reportedly had occurred during the regular council meeting on July 1st, so that would be in the evening of July 1st. The next morning, Ms. Dull was in her office, which is in Lorain City Hall. So I approached her, and I figured I would just start by asking her what had occurred. In my talks with her, there were several times when she broke down. She had to stop. She was physically crying. She was shaking, breathing heavily. It was quite apparent to me that she was still very upset with respect to what had occurred the night before. But throughout my interaction with her, she explained that at the very end of the council meeting that prior night, she was approached by Garen Petty, and that Garen Petty had walked through the kind of half door labeled city officials only beyond this point, approached her and began yelling and I guess kind of looming towards her or looming over her and continuing to advance on her. But essentially she said that he had berated her for an unknown amount of time. She didn't know exactly what he said. It was loud. She couldn't recall exact words that he used. She didn't believe that he was quite threatening her physically, but she was in fear of physical harm because of how irrational the encounter was. According to her, it caught her off guard. She was shocked. She was scared. Mr. Petty had approached her on the other side of the desk that she sits at. So there's kind of a long table or a long desk. She sits behind that desk. And on the other side of that desk, Mr. Petty approached her. And as he started complaining to her or berating her, in her words, he began to get louder, more aggressive with his pointing and shaking his fist, and closer to her as well. She explained that she was essentially frozen. She was stunned, and that she eventually left council chambers through kind of a back door, which is atypical of the door she typically uses. But she left through a back door because the desks were between them and she didn't feel safe leaving out the door she normally uses. She remembered, I believe it was Councilman Demakia. Excuse me. She remembered Councilman Demakia yelling from the other side of council chambers, where the city council at large sits, that someone needed to intervene. And like I said, she ended up leaving at that time. She went initially back to her office where Councilman Dan Nutt actually stood at the doorway to her office so that Mr. Petty couldn't get to her to continue whatever he had started during the end of that council meeting. And she told me that she actually got the key to the women's room, went to the women's room, and she broke down a bit in the women's room. When she came back, she was still really upset. She was told by Councilman Nutt and Councilwoman Pam Carter that they would escort her to her car. Councilman Demakia actually explained to her that he would take care of locking up City Hall. Essentially, he would do what she typically does at the end of a council meeting so that she could get out of there safely and get home. So she was obviously upset in the interaction. In order to validate, I guess, some of those statements, I tried to find some impartial witnesses and also any video. So because, like I'd mentioned before, city council chambers and all of our city council meetings are recorded, both audio and video, I tried to access the video. What I learned from just reviewing this video was that during this council meeting, right at the end of the council meeting actually had not been adjourned yet. There was motions for it to adjourn. However, prior to President of Council Arredondo actually pounding the gavel and ending the council meeting, Mr. Petty had walked through those gates, and it's observed on the video him begin to start talking in a loud voice, I suppose, and approach Ms. Dahl, or at least the area that Ms. Dahl was sitting. He looks to have walked just behind where Mayor Bradley and Safety Director Carrion sit, which is just, again, on the other side of Ms. Dahl's desk. So he would essentially have been between those two desks. And as he begins talking, it looks as though he's either pointing or holding a phone up. And unfortunately, the video cuts out there because the actual meeting itself by this time was over. And it looks as though that's when it was, it's not necessarily meant to catch what happens after the meeting. It's meant to capture the meetings. So the the video cuts out at that point. I saw several city employees that were there during, I guess, this initial approach. So I decided to reach out to a few of them. One of the city employees I reached out to was City Law Director Pat Riley. He was seen on the camera there. I asked him if he remembered seeing anything. He said, unfortunately, he believes he was there during the beginning of the interaction, but prior to the interaction really escalating, he was actually had left. Him and Assistant Law Director Zaleski had actually left the council chambers before it arose, or before it rose at all. I spoke to Director Carrion next. Director of Safety and Service Carrion explained that while he was there, because it was the end of the meeting, a lot was kind of going on. It was loud. You can kind of tell on the video. He said, but he recalled hearing a loud voice, but he was preoccupied with people asking questions at that time who were approaching him, one of which being the Chronicle reporter, Carissa Wojtach. And I believe he was also speaking to other city administrators. So according to him, his attention was kind of distracted, I suppose, from that specific interaction. And as a matter of fact, he recalled that it wasn't until Councilman Demakia actually yelled over to him from where council at large sits during the meetings that, hey, somebody needs to get him out of here, or he needs to be gotten out of here. That's when he turned his attention to Mr. Petty and saw that Mr. Petty was addressing what he believed to be Miss Dahl. And as Councilman Demakia and I believe Councilman Nutt approached as well, Mr. Petty left council chambers. So next, I spoke to Councilman Demakia. Councilman Demakia he recalled the incident very well. He explained that as he was sitting at his desk, again, on the other side of council chambers, but with a pretty clear view, he said he had observed a male he recognized to be Mr. Petty approach Miss Dahl. As he did, he said that he watched as Mr. Petty was pointing, was very animated, was very aggressive in his approach, and that he began to, I guess, escalate his aggression, his levels of aggression, according to Mr. Demakia. Further, according to Mr. Demakia, he looked at Miss Dahl and could see that Miss Dahl was apparently in fear. He described her demeanor as being shocked, as being frozen in fear, quite consistent with the things that Miss Dahl explained to me. And again, his concern was that Mr. Petty wasn't even supposed to be on that side of the clearly marked barrier, prohibiting people who were not public officials from coming there. I then interviewed Councilwoman Springowski about her recollection of the event. She pretty much said the same thing as Councilman Demakia, obviously in different words. But again, she was also sitting near Councilman Demakia, as she's also a councilwoman at large. And she said that her attention was directed over to Mr. Petty, who was screaming, who was very animated. And she also described Miss Dahl's demeanor as one of being scared and shock. I think she said tears were welling up in her eyes. She could see that she was clearly in fear. Another person that I saw on video was obviously President of Council, Joel Arredondo. And I asked him the same thing, and he described pretty much the exact same thing. However, he did add that on at least 2 other occasions prior to this occasion, he has specifically explained to Mr. Petty that he is not to be on that side of the barrier, clearly marked, public officials only beyond this point. During the video, as Mr. Petty walks through the barrier, I was able to observe President of Council Arredondo attempting to wave him back in a manner that would be consistent with telling someone, get back, you're not allowed back here. That is evident from watching the video. However, according to Mr. Arredondo, he also states that he verbally explained, you got to get out of here, you're not allowed back here. And that instead of complying, Mr. Petty's response was, well, what about Councilwoman Springowski's father, who apparently was on the other side helping Councilwoman Springowski with some sort of property that she had to carry. I would later speak to Councilwoman Springowski about this. She would explain that she's provided permission to her father to help her, as she's recently had some operations and can't lift so many objects of a certain weight. This is not uncommon for people to be invited behind those doors by either a member of council or council president or somebody with the authority to do so, in the sense that sometimes they'll be recognized for a good deed or something along those lines. However, in this case, it was very clear that not only was Mr. Petty not invited back, but was in fact told, you're not allowed here, get back, motioned, and his acknowledgement to hearing that command was to ask about someone else rather than to comply. And that person ended up having permission. Additionally, Council President Arredondo explained that he believed Ms. Dahl was scared, that he was in fear that Mr. Petty could or would potentially attempt to cause physical harm to her, and that the size difference alone between Mr. Petty and Ms. Dahl was something that he noted as well. So in a sense, her demeanor, his actions, and the size difference in ability to, in fact, cause harm were something that he pointed out. I spoke to Councilman Nutt as well, who was present during this. He, again, was another one that said I was on the other side of council chambers, but my attention was directed to essentially a loud, aggressive argument or aggressive statements that were occurring. And he said that he went over there to attempt to intervene or at least get between the two parties. But prior to him actually being there, Mr. Petty was walking out as Ms. Dahl was walking out of the back door. But Councilman Nutt was in fear enough that he actually went to Ms. Dahl's office to what he kind of described as, in a sense, stand guard at that doorway to make sure that Mr. Petty couldn't get to her, which I just kind of confirmed with him through several, words, I guess, that he was in fear that if somebody didn't go there, Mr. Petty would have reapproached her, and he was in fear of what might happen, and eventually indicated that physical harm was one of those things. I then asked him to describe Ms. Dahl's demeanor as well again, and again, he, just like the other witnesses, described her demeanor as being in fear, in shock, crying, or watery eyes. It's all pretty much consistent through all of the witnesses I spoke to. And that he also actually walked her to her car because he still didn't feel safe, because his words were, I wasn't sure where Mr. Petty was in City Hall. I didn't know if he had left City Hall or if he was waiting around, which again just indicates his, I guess, level of concern. That's all the interviews that I conducted. There were more people present, but honestly, it seemed to be quite redundant. All of the people that I interviewed were either elected officials, public officials. They're credible. I don't know of any conflicts that may jeopardize the validity or credibility of their statements. Rather than walk through 10 more people or 8 more people, I had enough, I believed, to support Ms. Dahl's statements that she was in fear. Between the video, what we started to see, between her demeanor the next day, and also what all the witnesses that I had interviewed said. The only other thing was, after this event occurred, it spawned City Hall, a reaction from City Hall in respect to safety and security. So Ms. Dahl typically operated with an open office where she can be approached by people in the public. One of those people were Mr. Petty 2 weeks prior. On June 17th, he had approached her to check on an inquiry about minutes from a committee meeting that took place on June 10th. It was a very cordial interaction. Mr. Petty himself actually recorded that interaction. But he approached her. She explained to him that the process of how she types those minutes, transcribes those minutes, and that they'd be ready in a timely manner, though they weren't ready at that time. He's very cordial, kind to her, left, and her concern that next day was, what if he comes back now? Because of the difference in his demeanor in that interaction and the interaction at the end of that council meeting. So from that point on, Chief McCann made sure that there were officers at every council meeting because of the fact that we do have auxiliary officers at the gates. However, there's never been typically officers at city council meetings. But in response to an employee in fear, we decided as the police department to start staffing council meetings. Additionally, Ms. Dahl she was escorted to her car at the end of her duty days. She was allowed to work from home, at least for the rest of that week. And her office is no longer open to the public at this point. Now they have a different system to where there's kind of a service window. Sure. So there were a lot of changes made to, I guess, address what she still felt was an unsafe environment. Her fears of Mr. Petty were still evident days later.
Okay. I just have 3 follow-up questions. Did Ms. Dahl explain to you what it is Mr. Petty was hollering about when he was approaching her?
She believes that he was upset that the minutes he had requested from one of those council committee meetings, were not ready. And she believes that he was upset at the time it took her to transcribe the minutes.
Okay. And secondly, you've testified to the court regarding this difference in physical stature between Ms. Dahl and Mr. Petty. Can you describe that for the court and why that was relevant?
Yes, ma'am. So I both observed that. The initial statement from President of Council, Mr. Arredondo, was that Mr. Petty is a large man. Ms. Dahl is a small female. I don't know their exact weight, height, but I would say that in my observations, Mr. Petty is north of 6 feet, probably close to 300 pounds, maybe 250, between 250 and 300. I would explain, at the risk of violating, that Ms. Dahl is a smaller statured female, maybe 5'5", 5'6", and under 200 pounds.
And lastly, the video footage that you were able to view, where does that video footage come from?
So that video footage is actually the City of Lorraine's video footage. It's recorded and posted. I actually just went online, pulled down that video. I did check with Ms. Dahl to make sure that there weren't additional video available that I could access. And unfortunately, she says there's not, because when that video cuts out, it was because she actually ended the recording as part of her duties.
And that video streaming, is that for the public's?
That's for public consumption, correct. Yep, both live stream and to, retroactively see what happened.
Very good. That's all I had, Jeff.
A couple questions. Is there any signage at the point where, I know there's a railing at council that says do not enter, for people only. Any type of signage that would advise somebody from the public they couldn't go through?
Yes, Your Honor. Every single gate, I would describe it as a small wooden half door, if you will. Every single one of those doors in council chambers has a large sign. We have pictures of that sign, but every single door in very large, it's a large black sign with white lettering on it that says city officials only beyond this point. And it's posted throughout as well.
And of all the people you spoke to, nobody can remember anything specifically that he said?
So out of all the people that I spoke to, many of them, according to Mr. Arredondo, he's deaf in one ear. or excuse me, he's hard of hearing in one ear. So he couldn't quite hear, but he saw more than anything Mr. Petty approach. He would have been the best one probably to hear any specifics. Now, as he approaches in the video, Your Honor, it is somewhat apparent, that it's you hear that it's louder. There's kind of many voices, so kind of a cacophony, if you will, of voices that make a general sound level. The folks, Mr. Demakia, Ms. Springowski, Mr. Nutt, who I spoke to, they were all quite far away, and according to them, they couldn't hear exactly what was being said. However, they heard what sounded like loud, aggressive yelling. It was more about the tone and the pitch rather than the wordage. As they approached, Your Honor, I believe that's when Mr. Petty decided to kind of disengage.
And even Ms. Dahl can't remember exactly what he said.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Dahl explains that she can't remember exactly what he said. She thinks it was something about the minutes that she hadn't had typed, but she pretty much said
threatening words that you and I would consider threats.
Yes, Your Honor. She could not recall any specific threats, like towards physical harm or of anything.
And she turned off the recording?
She turned off the recording.
So while he was up there threatening her or whatever, she turned off the recording?
Your Honor, she actually turned off the recording as he was approaching. It really wasn't quite apparent yet that he was talking to her. If we'd be able to review it, it seems a little more sensible. As the motion to adjourn the meeting passed, and just being someone that's familiar with City Council, obviously as the clerk of council, she's quite familiar. Once that motion to adjourn passed, you can see her kind of grab the mouse and begin preparing to shut down the recordings and essentially get out of City Council chambers. So I think that the process was already kind of starting. And as Mr. Petty approaches, as the meeting is ending, in my opinion, and watching that video, she was already in the process of probably closing things down and just trying to get out of there. Just didn't know that it was going to blow up into something like that.
So when the video cuts off, is he already through the barrier?
Yes, Your Honor. He's actually through the barrier.
How close to her is when does it cut out?
It cuts out when. So again, he was on the other side of a desk, somewhat like the desk I'm sitting at, Your Honor. When it cuts out, he's probably, if I had, and this is an estimate, he's probably about 2 feet to her right, but on the other side of that barrier. And as the witnesses stated, he kept getting closer and more aggressive, which is what prompted them to say he didn't just want to say a couple words and leave. He's actually rising in agitation.
Any other questions from the state?
No, sir.
Thank you, Officer.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Anyone else from the state?
There you go.
The court's going to take it under advisement. I'll try to issue some decision tomorrow. Again, the video is not going to tell me too much other than her desk, and nothing is picked up as to what he was saying as he was entering. Right?
So the video will show you him certainly past the barrier.
Would it be beneficial, do you think, for me to see or hear what you were able to see and hear?
We can provide it.
I would think just, if nothing else, to show that there was an interaction, that it had begun, and that it was actually prior to the council meeting even ending, that he had passed that barrier. I also, accompanying that video would be some of the photos that show you the signs I was talking about.
Why don't you do that? Supplement that for me.
Sure.
And then I'm going to be only here till Wednesday. Then I'm won't be here Thursday and Friday. So if you could give this to me tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest, so I can make a decision before I'm gone for those days.
And certainly, I'll get it to you today before I leave. Even if you're not here, you'll have it on a flash drive.
Well, Lieutenant Mercer, we'll have you give them a picture of the signage the court might appreciate, and then make sure you provide Ms. Villar with the footage, and then the judge can view it as well.
Yeah, how about that?
Absolutely.
Anything else then?
That's all we have, Judge.
Thank you all.
There it is. That's the end of Captain Morris's testimony. I will put this on YouTube. Today is January the 21st at 3:25 p.m. Garen Petty, I'm out.